The moment HOA Karen's fingers clenched my daughter's shirt, everything inside the diner froze. Plates stopped clattering, conversations died mid-sentence, and even the humming from the kitchen seemed to disappear. My 14-year-old daughter, Lily, shy, soft-spoken, and still recovering from past trauma, stood trembling as Karen's nails dug into the fabric. And then, with one violent jerk, the sound of ripping cloth echoed across the room like a gunshot. Lily gasped, tears instantly filling her eyes as her exposed shoulder shook under the fluorescent lights. People stared, but nobody moved, as if shocked into paralysis by the sheer audacity of this woman. And in that split second, when Lily looked at me with those broken, pleading eyes, something inside me snapped. Because what happened next, what she did, what I did, and what the entire diner witnessed would shake our whole town to its core. Before the story begins, I want to speak directly to every amazing person watching this. Which city are you watching from? Drop your city name down in the comments. I love seeing how far this community reaches. And before we dive deeper into this emotional roller coaster, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a story that exposes the truth, protects the innocent, and holds people like Karen accountable. Because what happened inside that diner wasn't just another HOA meltdown. It wasn't one of those petty rule-breaking complaints she usually throws at neighbors. No, this was different. This was personal. This was cruel. And it opened a door to secrets, lies, and a chain of events none of us could have imagined. My daughter Lily, who had already endured more than most kids her age, was simply trying to order pancakes on a quiet Saturday morning. She wasn't loud. She wasn't rude. She wasn't doing anything except being a child trying to enjoy breakfast. But Karen had been watching her from the moment we stepped in. She kept glancing at Lily, at her clothes, her hair, her small, anxious movements, like she was searching for something to criticize. We didn't know then, but Karen was about to unleash a storm. And that shirt she ripped? It was only the spark that lit everything on fire. Lily and I entered the diner like we had countless times before, the familiar scent of maple syrup and sizzling bacon wrapping around us like a warm hug, offering a softness Lily desperately needed after a stressful week at school. She had been bullied, overwhelmed, and exhausted, so a quiet breakfast together was supposed to be our reset. The diner wasn't fancy. Just a family-owned place with red leather booths, shining silver napkin holders, and waitresses who knew most customers by name, but to Lily it was her safe place. She liked the same booth by the window. She liked the same order. And she liked watching people walk by outside, because it helped her stay grounded. But that morning, the moment we stepped in, I noticed something off. Karen was already there. HOA Karen. The woman who had terrorized half the neighborhood with her constant complaints, citations, and threats. The woman who patrolled the street like she owned it. The woman who once yelled at Lily for walking too slowly past her house. She sat 3 tables away, stirring her coffee so aggressively the spoon clinked against the cup nonstop. Her eyes flicked up the moment we entered, narrowing as if our mere presence personally offended her. Lily instantly shrank behind me, clutching my sleeve the way she did whenever anxiety tightened around her chest. I whispered reassuringly, placed a hand over hers, and guided her toward our usual booth. We sat down, and Lily tried to relax, but I could feel the tension in her small hands. She kept glancing at Karen, then at the menu, then back at Karen. I tried to keep her focus on ordering pancakes, the thing she always looked forward to, but the atmosphere felt heavy, suffocating almost. The waitress came over and smiled warmly, calling Lily sweetheart, which earned a glare from Karen so sharp it could have cut glass. The attack didn't come immediately. It built slowly, like a storm gathering across an open field. First, Karen muttered under her breath about inconsiderate brats. Then she loudly commented about parents who can't control their kids. Lily kept her head down, trying not to react, but her shoulders curled inward as if she was trying to become invisible. I gently touched her hand, whispering that everything was okay, that Karen's words didn't matter. But I was wrong. They mattered to Karen. They mattered a lot. When Lily's sleeves slipped slightly as she reached for the syrup, revealing the small medical patch on her upper arm, a patch she needed for her anxiety. Karen's eyes zeroed in like she'd found a target. She stood up, abruptly, her chair screeching across the floor. The diner went silent. Everyone turned. Lily froze. Karen marched toward us, heels striking the tiles with sharp clicks that echoed like warnings. "What is that on her arm?" she demanded, pointing as if Lily were an object instead of a child. I gently pulled Lily closer and calmly told Karen it was none of her business. But Karen wasn't interested in answers. She wanted conflict. She wanted power. She wanted to prove something twisted. She leaned in closer to Lily, her face twisted in disgust, muttering words like dangerous and unstable, attacking a child who had never done anything to her. And then Lily made a mistake. She whispered, "Please stop," her voice trembling. Karen's head snapped around so fast it startled even me. She grabbed Lily by the shoulder. Lily whimpered. I shot to my feet instantly, but before I could pull Karen away, her hand jerked violently. The sound came next. That horrible, ripping sound. Lily's shirt tore open from the sleeve down to her collarbone. The fabric shredded in her fist like tissue paper. Lily gasped loudly, her eyes widening with shock and humiliation as everyone in the diner stared. Her exposed shoulders shivered under the cold air. Her breathing turned shallow. Panic began to claw up her throat. "Don't touch my daughter," I shouted, but the words came out raw and furious, louder than I intended. Karen stepped back, only a fraction, crossing her arms as if she had done nothing wrong, as if humiliating a child was a simple correction she was entitled to make. The diner erupted, some people whispering, others pulling out phones, a waitress yelling for someone to call the police. Lily was shaking uncontrollably, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. I wrapped my jacket around her shoulders, but the damage was done. The image of her broken, trembling, exposed in front of strangers, it stabbed through my chest like a knife. Karen smirked. She actually smirked. And that smirk was the moment everything inside me shifted. The moment I realized this wasn't about Lily's shirt. This wasn't about a medical patch. This wasn't even about Karen's delusional HOA authority. This was about power, her desire to crush anything that wasn't under her control. I stepped closer to her, lowering my voice, so only she could hear. "Leave," I said, "now." But instead of backing off, she leaned closer, her cold breath brushing my ear as she whispered, "Someone like her doesn't belong here." And in that single, cruel sentence, she lit a fire I could no longer contain. Because what happened after that, the retaliation, the witness who stood up, the truth Karen never expected to come out, was about to change everything. The diner went silent in a way I had never heard before, not the normal quiet of people finishing meals or waitresses taking orders, but a heavy, stunned silence filled with disbelief, anger, and a kind of electric tension that made the air feel thick enough to choke on. Lily sat beside me, wrapped in my jacket, trembling like a leaf caught in a storm, her fingers gripping the fabric so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her breathing was uneven, short, panicked, the kind that made my heart race because I knew she was moments away from a full anxiety attack. I crouched beside her, whispering gently, trying to steady her. But my voice felt small in that moment, drowned out by the roaring fire building in my chest. Across from us, Karen stood with that same arrogant posture, chin up, lips curled into a cruel smirk, as if she were the victim, as if she had just bravely corrected some great moral wrong. But then something unexpected happened, something Karen had clearly not prepared for. A man from the corner booth stood up, so fast his chair slammed backward into the wall. He was in his late 50s, tall, broad-shouldered, with a thick gray beard and the steady eyes of someone who'd seen more than most people ever would. His left arm bore a faded U.S. Marine Corps tattoo. He walked toward us with slow, controlled steps, every muscle in his jaw clenched, his hand balling into a fist at his side. Karen's smirk faltered as he approached. She glanced around for support, but nobody moved toward her. If anything, people backed away. The man stopped in front of her, towering over her, his voice low and shaking with anger as he said, "Did you just lay your hands on that child?" Karen scoffed, flipping her hair as if trying to regain control. She was being disruptive, she snapped. Someone had to do something. Kids like her shouldn't be allowed in public places without supervision. That sentence made something inside the Marine snap. His whole body stiffened. He took a step closer, pointing a trembling finger at her. "Lady," he said through gritted teeth, "I served 2 tours in Afghanistan. I've seen things that would make you curl up and cry. But what you just did, hurting a child, ripping her clothes off, that's cowardice. And I don't tolerate cowards." Karen stepped back instinctively, bumping into a table, her face twisting, this time not in superiority but in fear. She opened her mouth, probably to deliver one of her signature entitlement-fueled rants, but before she could speak, another voice cut in. "I recorded everything," a teenage girl shouted from across the diner, holding up her phone. "You assaulted her. You can't lie your way out of this." Karen's face turned ghost white. She spun around, eyes scanning the room, suddenly realizing she wasn't in control, not this time. "Give me that phone," she shrieked, lunging forward. But before she could take a single step, the Marine blocked her path. "Touch that girl," he warned, "and you'll regret it." A waitress hurried forward, her hands shaking as she said she had already called the police. Customers murmured in agreement, glaring at Karen with a mix of disgust and fury. Karen's bravado cracked under the weight of so many eyes. She stuttered, You people don't understand. That child, she's unstable. She had something dangerous on her arm." I stood then, slowly, deliberately placing myself between her and Lily. My voice was steady, but every word carried the weight of a parent pushed past their breaking point. That something dangerous is a medical patch that helps my daughter breathe and stay calm. You don't know her. You don't know what she goes through. And you had no right to touch her. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, unable to form a comeback. The Marine crossed his arms and added, "You're finished. Everyone here saw what you did." And that was when Karen snapped, not in anger this time, but in desperation. She stumbled backward, shaking her head frantically. No, this isn't happening. I was trying to help. But the words died on her tongue as the front door swung open and a police officer stepped inside. Karen froze. The color drained from her face completely as the officer's eyes scanned the room, taking in the torn shirt, the crying child, the raised phones, the furious customers. The waitress spoke first, her voice trembling as she explained everything she saw. Then the teenage girl handed over the video. The officer watched every second of it, Karen grabbing Lily, yanking her shirt, tearing it open, Lily crying, and the look he gave Karen afterward could have shattered concrete. "Ma'am," he said firmly, reaching for her arm, "you're coming with me." Karen shrieked. "No, she's lying. They're all lying. That girl is dangerous. I was protecting everyone." But her words bounced off the walls, empty and delusional. The officer didn't hesitate. He turned her around, cuffed her wrists, and began reading her rights. Customers clapped, some even cheering, and Lily, sweet, fragile Lily, watched through teary eyes, gripping my hand. But something strange happened then, something that sent a cold chill crawling down my spine. As Karen was being dragged out, she twisted her head toward me, her eyes burning with a hatred I had never seen before. And in a voice so low only I could hear, she whispered, "This isn't over." The Marine heard it too. His expression darkened. "She's unhinged," he muttered. "Watch your back." But even then, as Karen kicked and screamed, all the way to the police car, I didn't know just how right he was. Because what happened in the days after, what they uncovered about Karen, what she had been hiding, and who she had been threatening long before us, would blow the lid off everything we thought we knew. News travels fast in small towns, but what happened in that diner spread like wildfire, faster, louder, and fiercer than anything I'd ever witnessed. By the time Lily and I made it home, wrapped in silence and shock, the entire street buzzed with whispers, phone calls, and screenshots of the video the teenage girl had posted. Within an hour, it had gone viral locally. Within 3 hours, people from neighboring towns were sharing it. And by evening, the HOA Facebook group, usually filled with complaints about lawn heights and trash placements, exploded into chaos. Parents were furious. Veterans were disgusted. Even people who usually stayed silent came forward with stories, each one painting a darker picture of Karen's behavior over the years. As Lily sat on the couch with a blanket wrapped around her, sipping hot chocolate I had made her to calm her nerves, I watched the notifications blow up on my phone. Messages poured in from neighbors asking if she was okay, offering support, food, help. Things I never expected from people who usually avoided confrontation. But beneath that concern was something else too: anger. Real, simmering anger. People were no longer afraid of Karen. They were done being intimidated, and they wanted justice. Around 7 p.m., there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, I found Mrs. Thompson, the elderly woman from 3 houses down who rarely left her home, standing there with 2 other neighbors. She held a plate of cookies, but her eyes were serious. "I saw the video," she said softly. "That poor child, what she did was unforgivable." She wasn't talking about Lily. She meant Karen. Behind her, Mr. Davis, a father of 3, stepped forward. "We're organizing a meeting tonight," he said. "People are gathering at the community center. You should come." I hesitated, not because I didn't want to go, but because I didn't want to leave Lily alone. She sensed it, stood up slowly, and shook her head. "It's okay, Dad," she whispered. "Go. I don't want anyone else getting hurt because of her." Her voice, still trembling, still raw, hit me like a punch. I hugged her gently, promised I wouldn't be long, and asked a trusted neighbor to stay with her. When I arrived at the community center, I was shocked by what I saw. Dozens of people had gathered: parents, grandparents, teenagers, local veterans, small business owners. More cars were still pulling into the lot. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with frustration, concern, and a collective determination I'd never seen before. People weren't whispering. They were openly discussing what Karen had done. Some recounted past encounters, how she had followed kids home, taken pictures of people's yards, screamed at delivery drivers, even threatened to report neighbors for imaginary violations. But something became clear as more voices joined the discussion. Karen's behavior had escalated far beyond rude comments and HOA complaints. One mother stood up, tears streaming down her face, and said Karen had once grabbed her autistic son by the wrist for running too fast on the sidewalk. Another neighbor confessed Karen had banged on his door at midnight, claiming his porch lights were illegal. A veteran spoke up, saying she had reported him repeatedly for disturbing the peace whenever he stepped outside with his service dog. Then the Marine from the diner entered the room. People parted for him instinctively. His presence demanded quiet. He walked to the front, took a deep breath, and addressed everyone with the same commanding voice he'd used to stop Karen earlier. "I've dealt with threats in my life," he said, "foreign and domestic. But that woman? She's dangerous. Not because she's strong, but because she's relentless. She doesn't stop until someone stops her." He paused, scanning the crowd. "And now she put her hands on a child." A murmur rippled across the room. That was the breaking point for many. "What can we do?" someone asked. "The police took her," another said. "Isn't that enough?" But the Marine shook his head. "No, she's already posted bail. She's out." A heavy silence fell. It felt like the temperature dropped 10 degrees. "Out," someone whispered. "Already?" "Of course she is," muttered another angrily. "People like her always get out." Before panic could take over, the Marine raised a hand. "She's out," he repeated, "but she's not free." He explained that with the video, witness statements, and the officer's report, Karen was facing multiple charges, including assault of a minor. But the system was slow. And Karen was fast. "She's angry," he said, "and people like her don't take humiliation lightly. That family needs protection. Now." His words sent a strange mix of fear and gratitude through me. I had tried to be strong all day for Lily, pushing down my own terror, but hearing someone else voice what I secretly felt, that Karen wasn't finished, hit hard. Someone in the crowd suggested installing security cameras. Another proposed starting a formal petition to remove her from the HOA. A retired judge said he'd help legally. Then something unexpected happened. A teenage girl, nervously clutching her phone, stepped forward. I have more videos, she stammered. The room gasped. She swallowed hard and continued. I didn't want to say anything earlier, but she's been following kids around the neighborhood for weeks. I caught it on camera. I thought maybe it wasn't important, but after today, the Marine took her phone, brows furrowing as he watched the footage. His expression darkened instantly. He looked up at all of us and said, "This isn't just harassment. This is surveillance. Neighborhood surveillance. On children." That changed everything. Parents erupted, fear turning into fury. "She needs to be removed from this community," someone shouted. "She needs to be evaluated," another added. "She needs jail." The Marine nodded solemnly. "Tomorrow morning," he said, "we take every piece of evidence to the police chief. Together." For the first time since the diner incident, I felt hope, small, fragile, but real. The community wasn't just reacting. They were uniting. They were standing up not just for Lily, but for every person Karen had hurt. And as I drove home that night, exhausted but determined, I realized something. This wasn't just a battle anymore. It was a reckoning. But little did we know. The darkest truth about Karen was still buried, waiting to explode. The next morning arrived with an uneasy stillness, the kind that settles over a neighborhood before a storm breaks. I barely slept. Every creak in the house jolted me awake. Every shadow outside the window made my pulse spike. But I forced myself to stay strong for Lily. She slept curled up on the couch beside me, her small hand still gripping a piece of her torn shirt like a lifeline. When the sun finally rose, I tucked a blanket around her shoulders, made her breakfast, and waited for our trusted neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, to sit with her. At exactly 9 a.m., I headed to the police station where the Marine had told everyone to meet. What I didn't expect was the crowd. Nearly 50 people stood outside holding folders, flash drives, and printed screenshots, evidence statements, and stories stretching back months, even years. Parents held photographs. Teenagers clutched their phones. Elderly neighbors carried handwritten notes. It looked less like a neighborhood complaint and more like a class action case. The Marine stood at the front, his posture straight, jaw set with purpose. When he saw me, he walked over and placed a firm hand on my shoulder. "Your daughter didn't just expose her," he said quietly. "She saved a lot of people." His words sank into me like a weight, heavy but powerful. We were led inside by an officer who looked overwhelmed by the sheer number of people demanding to be heard. He guided us to a conference room where the police chief, a sturdy man with tired eyes, waited with a stack of paperwork already labeled HOA Karen Incidents. The chief sighed heavily as he looked around the room. "I didn't expect this many complaints," he admitted, "but after what happened yesterday, I guess this shouldn't surprise me." The Marine stepped forward first, placing the teenage girl's videos on the table. He explained the clips. Karen hiding behind bushes, photographing kids at the park, following teenage boys walking home from school, writing down license plates, and logging detailed notes in a small red notebook she always carried. The chief's face hardened with each passing clip. "This is obsessive behavior," he said, "possibly delusional." Then came Mr. Davis with evidence of fake HOA, letters Karen had mailed to neighbors, letters threatening fines, reporting imaginary violations, demanding property changes that the real HOA never approved. A mother presented screenshots of dozens of messages Karen had sent her at 2 a.m., accusing her autistic son of damaging community aesthetics by leaving chalk drawings on the sidewalk. Another parent revealed Karen had tried to force a teenage girl to scrub graffiti off a wall she didn't paint, grabbing her arm when she refused. The police chief massaged his temples, overwhelmed. "Why didn't anyone report this earlier?" he asked. The room went silent. Then a quiet voice from the back answered, "Because she always had connections." Everyone turned to see who had spoken. It was a woman in her 40s, tall, stern-looking, but with sadness etched into her face. She told us her brother worked in law enforcement. The woman continued. "She said she could get our kids arrested. She said She knew people who would make our lives miserable. We were scared. I felt my stomach twist. Karen, with her HOA title and her sharp tongue, had been using fear as a weapon all along. The chief wrote notes rapidly, asking for names, dates, and details. Then he turned to me. "Tell us about yesterday," he said. I took a breath and retold everything: the diner, the insults, the shirt ripping, the video, Karen's whisper that this wasn't over. The chief's expression darkened at that last part. "She threatened you?" "Yes," I said, "and she meant it." The Marine nodded vigorously beside me. "That woman is unstable. She needs a psychiatric evaluation immediately." That seemed to trigger something in the chief. He stood, opened a drawer, and pulled out a thin folder. "You're not going to believe this," he murmured, "but this isn't her first accusation of assault." The room stiffened. 2 years ago, the chief continued, she was reported for grabbing a teenager by the hoodie outside a grocery store. Claimed he was stealing energy from her home because he walked too close to her car. Charges were dropped because her brother intervened. A ripple of anger and disgust washed through the room. "Where's her brother now?" the Marine asked sharply. The chief sighed. "Retired. Lives out of state. She's been using his name for power she doesn't actually have." Before anyone could respond, the door opened, and an officer stepped inside looking pale. "Chief, you need to see this." He handed the chief a report. As the chief read it, his eyes widened. "She tried to file a counterclaim this morning," he said slowly, "against the little girl." Gasps erupted around the room. "On what grounds?" I demanded, horrified. "She accused your daughter of initiating violence," the chief said. "Claims she was emotionally unstable and lunged at her." My heart pounded with rage. Lily, who could barely raise her voice above a whisper on her worst days, lunging at a grown adult? The idea was sickening. The Marine slammed his hand down on the table. "She's twisting reality. This is delusional behavior. She's dangerous." The chief nodded. "This confirms it. We're escalating the case." He looked around the room. "I'm requesting a court order for a full psychological evaluation and a restraining order to protect the child and her family." I exhaled shakily, relief mixing with dread, but before that relief could settle, the officer returned, this time with a small, red notebook in hand. Karen's notebook. They found it in her car when she was arrested. "You all need to hear this," the officer said. The chief opened the notebook, and the room leaned in. Inside were pages and pages of notes, detailed logs of people's movements, times children left their homes, descriptions of clothing, license plate numbers, even notes about Lily. My blood ran cold when the chief read aloud. "Child at house number 14. Slow walker. Avoids eye contact. Possibly unstable. Monitor." The room gasped. The Marine's fists clenched. "She was stalking that child," the officer said, quietly. "This goes way beyond HOA complaints." The chief stood abruptly. "We're upgrading this to an active investigation. Karen isn't just facing assault charges anymore. She's facing stalking, harassment, and potential endangerment charges." The air shifted, a mix of vindication, horror, and collective determination. But before we could leave, the chief added one final blow, "And she's out on bail. She's somewhere in the neighborhood right now." A chill shot through my spine. The Marine stepped closer, lowering his voice. "She's going to come after you before the police can stop her." And deep down, I knew he was right, because something in Karen's eyes yesterday, the hatred, the obsession, told me this wasn't over. Not even close. Driving home from the police station that afternoon felt like crossing into enemy territory. Every street corner, every parked car, every rustling tree branch felt like it was watching me, waiting, holding its breath. My hands tightened on the steering wheel, not because I feared the neighborhood itself, but because I knew Karen was somewhere in it, unhinged, unpredictable, and now fully aware that the entire community was turning against her. As I pulled into my driveway, I spotted Lily through the living room window, sitting curled on the couch with Mrs. Thompson beside her. She looked small, fragile, yet trying to smile when she saw me. I walked in, hugged her tightly, and assured her the police were handling everything, though deep inside, a gnawing fear told me things were far from resolved. After Mrs. Thompson left, I double-checked the locks, installed a temporary security camera the Marine had given me, and kept all the curtains closed. For a moment, the house felt safe, quiet, warm, and protective, until the first sign that something was dangerously wrong arrived. A small envelope was slipped under our front door. No knock, no footsteps, just silence. The envelope was blank, no name, no address, no handwriting. My heartbeat quickened. I opened it cautiously. Inside was a single piece of paper, the edges torn unevenly, the handwriting jagged and frantic. You think a crowd can save you? I see everything. I know everything. And I'm coming for what's mine. My blood ran cold. What's mine? Did she mean Lily? The thought made my stomach churn. I immediately called the police, but before I could finish explaining, the officer told me they were already sending a patrol car to our street. They had received 3 other calls from neighbors reporting suspicious activity involving a woman matching Karen's description wandering between houses. The fear in their voices mirrored my own. I hung up and returned to the living room where Lily sat, clutching her blanket. She noticed my expression instantly. "Dad, what's wrong?" she whispered. I forced a steady breath. "Nothing you need to worry about. The police are coming to check on the neighborhood." She didn't believe me. I could see it in her trembling fingers, but she nodded anyway. I sat beside her, keeping her close, trying to calm both of us. An hour passed, then another. The patrol car came, circled the block, and left. Nothing happened. Not a sound. Eventually, Lily fell asleep on my shoulder, exhausted from the whirlwind of fear and stress. I stayed awake, listening to the ticking of the clock and the faint hum of the refrigerator, every ordinary noise suddenly sharp and alarming. Around 11:45 p.m., a soft tapping echoed from outside. I froze. The tapping came again, slow, deliberate, as if someone wanted me to know they were there. I carefully lowered Lily onto the couch and moved toward the window, lifting the curtain just enough to peek through. That's when I saw it. A figure standing across the street, motionless, facing my house. Even in the dim street light, I recognized the posture, the shape, the unsettling stillness. Karen. She stood like a statue, hands clasped behind her back, her head slightly tilted, as if studying the house, calculating, waiting for the perfect moment. Rage and fear crashed into me at the same time. I grabbed my phone and dialed the police again. While I waited, I grabbed one of the Marine's spare tactical flashlights, the heavy metal kind, and kept it close. When the dispatcher finally answered, I explained everything, my eyes never leaving Karen's silhouette. "An officer is already in your area," the dispatcher assured. "He'll be there in a moment." But seconds before the police car turned onto the street, Karen suddenly turned her head, slowly, deliberately, locking eyes with me through the window from across the street. A smile crept across her face. Not a normal smile. A stretched, chilling expression that didn't reach her eyes. And then she stepped backward into the darkness until she disappeared. The police arrived moments too late. We searched the area, but she was gone. They assured me they'd patrol again, told me to keep the doors locked, and promised to push the restraining order through as fast as possible. But something about the way Karen moved right before vanishing told me she had planned this. It wasn't random. It wasn't impulsive. She had a purpose. After the police left, I checked the front door again, still locked. The windows locked. The backyard empty. But when I returned to the living room, my heart nearly stopped. Lily wasn't on the couch. The blanket was there. The pillow was there. But Lily, my daughter, my terrified little girl, was gone. Panic ripped through me. "Lily!" I yelled, my voice cracking. I ran through the house, checked the bedrooms, the bathroom, the hallway closets. Nothing. I ran outside, flashlight in hand, shouting her name into the night. "Lily! Lily, answer me!" That's when I saw the back gate slightly open. I sprinted toward it, sweat dripping down my back. The flashlight beam flicked wildly across the yard until it landed on a small figure crouched behind the shed. I exhaled in agony. Lily sat there hugging her knees, shaking violently. When she saw me, she sobbed and threw herself into my arms. "Dad, someone knocked on my window," she cried. I held her tightly, feeling her entire body trembling. I got scared. I didn't want to wake you. I didn't want her to get inside. She didn't have to say her name. I already knew. Karen had been at the window, watching her, calling her, or worse, trying to lure her out. I carried Lily inside, locking every door twice, drawing every curtain, and keeping every light on. But the night wasn't over, because when I returned to the living room, I noticed something on the floor near the front door, another envelope. This one slightly damp, as if held by sweaty hands. Inside was one sentence written in the same jagged handwriting. "Next time, she won't hear me knocking." I stood there frozen, rage boiling, fear choking, heart racing. Karen wasn't stalking anymore. She was hunting. And the worst part? The twist hadn't even fully revealed itself yet. Because at the bottom of the paper, smeared lightly under the ink, was something that turned my blood to ice, a small piece of fabric. From Lily's torn shirt. Karen had been inside our yard, close enough to take it. And that was the moment I realized she wasn't targeting Lily out of hatred. She was targeting her because she was obsessed. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't rage. This was fixation. And fixation is deadly. The longest night of my life finally ended, but the sunrise didn't bring comfort. It brought clarity. A terrifying, undeniable clarity. Karen wasn't stopping. She wasn't backing down. She wasn't even hiding anymore. She had crossed the line from harassment into something far darker, far more dangerous, and unless someone stopped her, she would keep going until something irreversible happened. So, when morning light filtered through the blinds, I made a decision. I wasn't waiting for the system to catch up. I wasn't letting fear control the day. I was going to end this with the law on my side and the community behind me. The moment Lily woke, still shaken, still clinging to me, I promised her that today would be the last day she would ever have to be afraid of Karen again. I wrapped her in a jacket, got her into the car, and drove straight to the police station. The Marine was already there, like he knew I was coming. He walked over immediately, eyes serious but filled with determination. "She escalated again, didn't she?" he asked. I nodded, handing him the envelope with the disturbing message and the scrap of Lily's torn shirt. His jaw tightened as he read it, and without saying a word, he marched inside. The police chief met us within minutes, and when he saw the note and the fabric, his face shifted from frustration to fury. "She broke into your yard," he growled. "That's criminal trespassing. Combined with everything else, this is enough to move forward immediately." He didn't waste time. He called in detectives, sent officers to sweep our property, and pulled up Karen's file again. What happened next was the turning point. The Marine told the chief about the night vigil outside my house, about Karen watching from across the street, about the tapping on the window, and the fear Lily endured. The chief listened carefully, taking notes, shaking his head slowly as each detail added another layer of seriousness to the case. "She's spiraling," he said. "Fast." Then came an unexpected knock on his office door. An officer stepped in, holding a stack of freshly printed papers. "Chief, we pulled her phone records and her online activity," he said. "There's something you need to see." He spread the documents across the desk, search histories, screenshots, saved photos. My breath caught in my throat. Karen had hundreds of pictures of children in the neighborhood. Hundreds. Some were from public areas, but others were taken through windows, over fences, behind trees. And the most disturbing part? She had dozens of photos of Lily. Some from the park, some from the sidewalk, some from angles only someone standing near our property could have taken. My hands shook as I stared at them. She had been watching Lily long before the diner incident, long before the confrontation. This wasn't spontaneous anger. It was obsession, built slowly, quietly, dangerously. "This is enough," the chief said firmly. "We're getting a warrant. Now." He excused himself, heading straight to the district judge to request an emergency arrest warrant and a psychiatric evaluation order. The Marine put a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "It's going to end today," he said. I promise. I believed him, but I still felt a knot in my chest because Karen wasn't stupid. She was unpredictable, manipulative, and desperate. And desperate people do reckless things. As we waited, Lily sat quietly in the corner of the office, hugging her knees. When she looked up at me, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Dad, what if she comes again?" I knelt beside her, brushing hair from her face. "She won't. Not after today." But even as I said it, something inside me remained uneasy. Minutes later, the chief burst back into the room. "Warrant approved," he said. "We're bringing her in." Officers mobilized. Immediately, police cars, unmarked vehicles, drones scanning the neighborhood. It felt surreal watching the coordinated effort unfold, knowing it was all to stop one unhinged woman. But before the officers left, the Marine stepped forward. "I'm going with you," he said. The chief hesitated, but then nodded. "Fine. Stay behind the line." They headed out in a convoy. I stayed behind with Lily, watching through the station window, praying it would end smoothly. But the moment the patrol cars turned onto our street, the radio crackled with a report that made my blood run cold. "Chief, suspect's vehicle spotted leaving the neighborhood, heading toward the east entrance at high speed." Karen was running. The chief swore under his breath and ordered units to intercept. The next 10 minutes felt like an eternity. Lily held my hand so tightly I could feel her nails digging into my skin. Officers ran back and forth, radios buzzing, tension filling every corner of the station. Then, finally, word came through. Suspect stopped at the intersection near the old mill. Officers have her in custody. I exhaled so sharply I felt dizzy. It was over, or so I thought. But when they brought Karen into the station, handcuffed, wild-eyed, ranting about lies and conspiracies, something unexpected happened. As she was escorted past us, she suddenly lunged in our direction, held back only by 2 officers gripping her arms. Her voice cracked as she screamed, "This isn't over. She belongs with me. You don't deserve her." The entire station went silent. Officers froze. The chief stared at her in horror, and I felt the floor tilt beneath my feet. "She belongs with me." Those words weren't anger. They weren't revenge. They were delusion. Karen wasn't just obsessed. She believed Lily was hers somehow, emotionally, mentally, or through some twisted fantasy she had constructed. That was the final confirmation the chief needed. "Get her evaluated immediately," he ordered. "She's a danger to herself and others." Karen was dragged away, still screaming, still clawing at the air, still furious that her fantasy had been shattered. And this time, there was no bail, no loophole, no influence. The psychiatric evaluation determined she was severely unstable, suffering from a dangerous combination of paranoia, fixation, and delusional attachment. She was placed into an involuntary psychiatric hold with long-term supervision and no possibility of release without multiple clearances. But the greatest moment of relief came when the chief handed me a document. "Your restraining order," he said, "permanent, lifetime. She will never come near your daughter again." Relief flooded me so intensely I had to sit down. Lily leaned against me, dissolving into tears, not from fear, but from release, from finally being safe, from finally being believed. The community rallied around us afterward. Neighbors brought food, cards, flowers. The Marine visited often, making sure we had security installed. The teenage girl who recorded the first video came by to apologize for waiting so long to share her evidence, though I told her she had nothing to be sorry for. She helped save Lily's life. And just like that, the neighborhood slowly returned to peace. Doors that had once been shut reopened. Kids played outside again. People smiled more. And Lily? She healed. Slowly, bravely, beautifully. The nightmares faded. The fear eased. And every time she looked at me, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Her dad would burn the world before letting anyone hurt her again. Karen had tried to break us. She had tried to shatter our peace, our safety, our life. But instead, she only made us stronger. Before you go, I want to speak directly to you. the incredible person watching this right now. Stories like this aren't just entertainment. They're real reminders that every child deserves safety, every parent deserves peace, and every community deserves justice. So, I want to ask you something important. Backhand index pointing right, what would you have done if this happened to your child? Tell me in the comments. Your voice matters more than you think. And if you felt even one moment of anger, shock, or heartbreak during the story, if you wanted justice, if you wanted Lily safe, then please hit that like button so this story reaches more people. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next twist-filled story. And turn on notifications so you're the first to hear what happens next. Your support is what keeps this channel alive. Your comments are what keep these stories growing. And your presence is what keeps this entire community strong. Stay safe, stay kind, and I'll see you in the next story.